Hi there everyone, welcome. My name is Mayra Montes and today we will be talking about social identity theory. Let us begin by taking a look at what will be covered today. First, we will briefly go over the definition of social identity theory. Second, we will take a quick minute and get to know a little bit about the scholars behind this theory. Third, we will go over what social identity theory proposes to get a better understanding of how this theory works. And finally, we will see how social identity theory can be applied through an example. Let's get started. Social identity theory, by definition, is a person's sense of who they are based on their group memberships. Henry Tajfel and John Turner are the two scholars behind the idea of social identity theory. Henry Tajfel was a Polish social psychologist that was best known for his work in cognitive aspects of prejudice and social identity theory. He was very interested in investigating the basis of prejudice that could lead to such an extreme outcome. John Turner was a British social psychologist who had a long-standing interest in social identity and self-categorization process. Some of his research interests included intergroup relations, prejudice, and stereotyping. Now that we've talked about the key theorists, we can now take a look at what social identity theory proposes. Social identity theory proposes that a person's sense of who they are depends on the groups to which they belong to. An individual does not just have a personal selfhood, but multiple selves and identities associated with their affiliated groups. Tajfel proposed that the groups which people belong to, for example, a baseball team fan club, family, or social class, were important sources of pride and self-esteem. In order to increase our self-image, we enhance the status of the group to which we belong to. In doing so, we divide the world into them and us, meaning in-groups and out-groups. So what exactly is an in-group and an out-group? In simple terms, an in-group is the group to which we belong to, and an out-group is the group that's different from ours. Group members of an in-group will seek to find negative aspects of an out-group, thus enhancing their self-image. Let's go over a quick example. For instance, a person may classify themselves as a middle-class individual and believe themselves to be a part of an in-group with other individuals that are also from the same social class. Therefore, this group of middle-class individuals may view the lower class to be part of an out-group because they do not share the same socioeconomic class. Through this example, we can see how the middle-class individuals, or the in-group, found a negative aspect of the out-group, in this case the lower-class individuals, in order to enhance their self-image for being a part of a more prestigious social class. Now that we have a better idea of what an in-group and out-group is, let's take a look at the three stages that create this in-group and out-group mentality. The three stages are the following: social categorization, social identification, and social comparison. The first stage is social categorization. This is when we categorize people in order to understand the social environment. We use social categories such as black, white, professor, Christian, Muslim, student, and bus driver because they are useful. If we assign people to a category, then that tells us things about those people. An individual can belong to many different groups. The next stage of the process is social identification. Social identification is when we adopt the identity of the group we have categorized ourselves as belonging to, and we act in ways that we perceive members of that group to act. For example, if you identify as a college student, you will most likely behave within the norms of that group. As a consequence of your identification with that group, you will develop an emotional identification and your self-esteem will be dependent on it. Let's take a look at this clip for an example of social identification.
If we want to turn this place right, we have to speak as one united group. Who's in?
After watching this video, we can see how the inmates of Litchfield in Orange is the New Black all identify as resentful inmates. They begin acting and behaving in the same way by going against the jail guards. We can also see the development of emotional identification and higher levels of self-esteem through the inmates' similar verbal and nonverbal reactions. Now that we've gone over the first two stages, let's go over the last stage. The final stage is called social comparison. It occurs after we categorize ourselves with a group and identify ourselves as being members of that group. We tend to compare our group against another group. Each group or category has more power, prestige, status, and so on. This helps explain prejudice and discrimination, since a group will tend to view members of competing groups negatively to increase self-esteem. Let's go over a quick example. You and your group of friends identify as Dodgers fans. You are in class one day and notice a student in class wearing Angel gear after the Dodgers lost their 7th World Series game. In order to increase your self-esteem, you might compare the Dodgers, in this case the in-group, to the Angels, the out-group, by mentioning that the Dodgers were at least good enough to make it to the World Series this year in general. So now that we've gone over the 3 stages that create the in-group and out-group mentality, let's go apply social identity theory to a real-life example. As mentioned earlier in the video, an individual can belong to and associate themselves with many different groups. For example, one of the first groups you belong to and plays a big role in shaping the person you are is your family. They are the core essence of shaping your identity through norms, rules, values, and expectations. Another group you may belong to that also plays a role in constructing the person you are is your gender. Your gender is a big part of the person you are and determines the way you perceive others in society. Whether you are female, male, transgendered, these different groups influence our lifestyles differently. Additionally, if you are a religious individual, one's religion could be considered a group that an individual is a part of and may affect a person's sense of identity and lifestyle. A job can also be a factor that determines an individual's identity. People tend to spend a lot of their time in their workplace and hence become vastly influenced by the people they work with. You are also a part of a group at school. Being a part of an institution like Cal State LA is an example. Being a part of this group of individuals will instantly affect who you are as a person because of the exposure and interpersonal experiences with the diverse student popularity at this institution. Now that we've gone over a couple of different examples of groups, I hope you now have a better idea of what social identity theory is and how these group memberships influence and shape your identity and therefore allow you to get a better sense of who you are. Please feel free to go back to any part of the video that you may need to review. Thank you for watching.